Uh, of course, as been mentioned, it's to talk about how can we have just heard about Sharia audit from the experts who have done it by themselves, who have set up the processes and the regulations. I'm just trying to put a bit of critical view on what these experts have been doing in their domain. And I start by raising what I call seldom asked questions. These are not frequently asked questions. And these are seldom from the point of view of bankers, the banks we are talking about. We might have raised it many a times in our individual capacity or otherwise, but seldom in the case of banks, and certainly in the case of Sharia auditors, they would hardly raise this question to themselves. I think, and I think that it's, to be fair with them, they shouldn't be, because they were not supposed to have raised this as part of their job, but they would otherwise perhaps outside. So for me, these are SAQs, not FAQs. These are two SAQs. Is Sharia audit sufficiently defined? And I'm emphasizing on the word sufficiently. Certainly, Sharia audit has been defined, but is it sufficiently defined to include a focus on Maqasid al-Sharia in it? And does the current practice of Sharia audit sufficiently pursue Maqasid al-Sharia to result in welfare of the society at large? It's a bit long a question. Perhaps we can work further to refine it and make it shortened. Then we also would like to, should be asking ourselves what specific steps need to be taken to pave a way for the Maqasid al-Sharia to be brought into the practice of Islamic banking and finance industry, and hence satisfy the welfare objective of Sharia. So that's what we are trying to achieve in this brief presentation. So we'll start with the first one, and I will be using MAS or MAS for that in the meaning of Maqasid al-Sharia. I think the best thing, if we pose ourselves certain questions, and it is best for us to first understand what Maqasid al-Sharia are. Now, I know that we have been talking about it, certain perspective has been given. I'm not necessarily trying to suggest that this is what you should take away from this session. This is how based on my readings, I believe that this is how it is, and this is how scholars have actually or practitioners have also looked into, but scholars in particular. To go back and understand Maqasid al-Sharia, we must first understand that Sharia is a set of divine Islamic laws, and we have talked extensively about it. We also have to understand that when we adhere to this letter of the law, this is where we say and we call that we have complied with the law. That is what is the compliance with law. As something which is extensively being done, and but there is always a reasoning, there is always a purpose behind any law which is created. There is no reason, I mean, we wouldn't come up with any law, and I'm not referring to Islam here, regardless of the faith, regardless of any faith or otherwise. Wherever there is a law, there is a reason to be serviced through that law. And that reasoning is known as the spirit of Sharia, or in Arabic we can term it as Maqasid or Maqsad al-Sharia. Maqasid is the plural of that. The origin and the primary purpose of Sharia has been to provide benefit or maslaha, and again it has been talked about earlier in the morning sessions, so to provide that benefit or maslaha to the individuals and society, which is a socially conscious conduct resulting into welfare for all. That's what essentially what Maqasid or Maqsad is. This purpose has been quoted by scholars and stated that this is actually based on a verse of Quran where it clearly says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that we have not sent you but as a mercy to the world, i.e. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sent to be a mercy for all the words, just not for human beings. It's the entire word. The word, Arabic word here is alameen, which is actually to cover all type of words here. So that is the primary purpose, and the interpretation of that is that we are talking about welfare for the society, benefit, maslaha, and all that. Now, what is the nature and classification of these Maqasid al-Sharia? There are three actually. We'll start with the most critical one. We haven't necessarily talked in detail, although there has been a brief reference during the day. We haven't necessarily gone into more detail, but there are certain purposes, certain objectives, certain welfare objectives, which are considered essential in nature, absolutely necessary in nature, known as in Arabic daruriyat, and they aim to ensure that ensure very survival of normal order of society. If any of these objectives are not being pursued, are not being met, the danger is the normal order of society will not prevail. And at times we see that order being disturbed. And if we go back and try and evaluate, we'll find that in many cases this is because of one of these reasons. There are two types within. Certain are based on the textual reference from Quran, the Nasus al-Hadud, where that it is absolutely required and necessary that certain things are protected, certain aspects of us are protected. Protection of our faith, protection of our life, protection of our lineage, protection of intellect, protection of property, protection of honor, which was later added. Initially there were 5 talked about, but they have, all these 6 have a reference to Quran, the textual reference, and hence we will hardly find scholars and otherwise practitioners debating or having a different view than what is there. However, there is an open-ended list of a generic reference to Sharia, which is, that list of essentials goes like fulfillment of contracts, that we should all fulfill the contracts we make, social welfare and support, freedom, economic development, so on and so forth. These are all more recent additions to this list of essentials. Some may agree, some may not agree, but as I said, this is because they are not based necessarily on direct textual references. The other important classification is is one which is complementary in nature. So known as hajiyat. These are the type of those maqasid or objectives which seek to remove any hardship that do not pose threat to survival of normal order otherwise. So in the absence of these, the normal order would not be affected. Okay, but if we try to achieve these objectives, they will help remove any further hardships beyond that normal order. Okay, so then there are a number of examples of it, and in the interest of time, I won't go in detail, but pick one only. For example, in the case of ibadat, worships, while someone is traveling, they may not fast, for example, although it's a compulsory fast on them, they may not fast because they are traveling. So these are the type of complementary objectives. Enhancing in nature, these are the ones which are tahsiniyat. These target to refine and perfect our social conduct. So these are the 3 types. I'll leave the details for you to perhaps if these slides can be distributed later. Now, if I look at the Sharia audit, the definition itself, the way it has been defined in case of Bank Negara Malaysia, for example, I've just quoted, that it is a periodical assessment to add value and improve the degree of compliance, which is the main objective. So what is the main objective? Sharia compliance, which I referred to earlier on, which is legality of it. The primary objective in case of AOF standard number 3 on governance is also the internal Sharia review. That's for internal Sharia review, the implementation of Sharia rules and principles as determined by Islamic Financial Institutions Sharia Supervisory Board. Again, to comply with what has been determined to be the Sharia compliance criteria, just to do that. So essentially, this is what reflects into the practice as well. When we analyze these definitions and the practice, what we understand is the focus is on the legal compliance alone. There's no explicit mention of Maqasid al-Sharia. Objective is to implement Sharia rules and principles as determined by relevant Sharia bodies. And hence the intent and practice of Sharia audit is all about legal compliance. And there is no reference to moral responsibility or Maqasid al-Sharia. Legal, and I come back to what Ashraf Yus mentioned, absolutely right. This is essentially what we needed to do. It was all about the contract, legality, this is what we were supposed to have done, but that was only a necessary condition, which fortunately to a great degree we have achieved. We need to move on, and in order to bring sufficiency to the process, we need to now bring and introduce Maqasid al-Shari'ah into the practice as well. Hence, we believe that the Shari'ah audit can be refined further by having Maqasid al-Shari'ah embodied within the basis and framework of Shari'ah audit. Unless that happens, we don't see further improvement to happen. What steps can be taken? Just 2 slides, and I'll very quickly go away. We need to conduct research and have majority of Sharia scholars to agree on what is the framework of Maqasid al-Shari'ah. I've given one, doesn't necessarily mean this is the absolute final one, but scholars need to help us determine this framework. Then we should conduct research and have a majority of all the stakeholders to agree on a code of socially conscious conduct based on Maqasid al-Shari'ah. And then we should use this theoretical building block to enter the next phase, which is the practical one. All that are nice pies in the sky. No one is going to take it unless we go practical. What needs to be done is the final slide, by the way. That we need to conduct research and create solutions which can lead to self-desired adoption of Islamic banking institutions. So we should create solutions which banks should be more than willing to take. And what is it? It is going to happen. There should be a business case made around the moral case. We should not be just selling the moral case to them. We should come up with a way that they should see that by adhering to the socially responsible practice or Maqasid al-Shari'ah, it will only help them maximize their own profit in the first place before the social benefit is coming out of it. And they would be more than happy to take it. And if as a byproduct, this happens, this in a short order will immediately bring them onto the board what we want them to do. And of course, Sharia audit must have a process to gauge the Maqasid al-Shari'ah based code of conduct as well. Thank you, and if you have any further, I don't know, whatever additional questions or ask questions, you can call it. So it's a blessing back. Thank you.
Thanks.